I'm not gonna lie to you guys, and this is honestly a completely transparent and honest opinion here. I am considering maybe coming back once per week to do a raid once per week. I'm talking about Wrath, by the way. Spoke a little bit to Rajiji, and I might do like a we might do like a raid once per week, something like that, to do like a TUGC. I would like to like actually gear up for ICC as well. Regardless, speaking of Wrath of the Lich King, let us see what Scott J has to say about it.
Think about it. We're on borrowed time now. One real phase of content left, one real raid left, and then what? And what? In the few Cataclysm-related videos I've put out over the last few months...
Okay, you know, never mind.
Comments are pretty much what you would expect. There's some of you really excited for what's to come next, and some of you claim you will be gone once the Lich King falls. I read exactly the same comments when TBC was coming out, and people were saying it's no longer classic because it's not vanilla, and exactly...
No, I think Cataclysm is a lot more controversial in that regard than TBC. I really think so, because TBC is still like kind of classic a little bit. Cataclysm is a lot more of a different cookie, right?
The same again when Wrath of the Lich King was coming. Probably even more so with Wrath on the basis that they split quite a bit of the audience by not adding Random Dungeon Finder. On top of that, it could just be me, but personally in the guilds I've been part of during Wrath of the Lich King, I saw a massive drop-off in the player base in Nax, unlike the first tier of content in Classics.
But it's just Nax. It's just like we've already done Nax. It's nothing new. It's literally just an easier version of vanilla. So a lot of people just don't find it fun
so far. But anyway, instead of worrying about what changes Kata would need to succeed or how far away it will be until we're playing BFA Classic, let's focus a bit closer to home and look at the good things still to come in Wrath Classic, and also speculate a little bit on things like Random Dungeon Finder being added, the future of Titan Dungeons, what will happen to Ruby Sanctum, and probably more. Starting with a minor one, but something people seem quite excited about, is this little fella, Frozo. He'll be flying on his magic carpet just outside the Dalaran auction house and trades you different goods for your frozen orbs. Now, I honestly don't know how useful this will be, based on the fact a frozen orb gives you epic gems for the JC daily, which keeps them in demand, and looking at the prices at the time of researching this video, on the NA market they average just under 60 gold, and on
I don't know if this is actual on the servers, but he has 100,000 gold here. It still blows my mind how broken the economy is in Wrath.
EU just under 70 gold. So that would be some expensive Eternals if you was to start trading in your frozen orbs. Unless they had more lucrative trading opportunities than this vendor, I see it being pretty dead on arrival. You can get ruined orbs or Crusader orbs through it, but again, I feel like the price of frozen orbs will just mean that using them for JC or selling them on the auction house will be more profitable than trading them in for anything at all. I've got to be honest, the new dungeons that get added are among my favourite in all of WoW's history. We all know Phase 3 is a great catch-up phase, but going into the ICC patch really builds on that with these three dungeons. And it's where I feel there could be some problems with the Titan Room dungeons. We'll get onto that in a minute. But before I do tell you my thoughts on that, let's talk about the dungeons first.
This one is the worst. Out of the new... this one is the one I like the least, personally, out of the 3 dungeons that comes out, right?
You get 3 new dungeons, all with normal and heroic modes. They bring tons of loot, some reasonably challenging 5-man content, and some pretty awesome RP. In one of them particular, we've got Forge of Souls, Pit of Sauron, and Halls of Reflection. The loot...
I think Halls of Reflection, this one is the coolest, because it has Lich King like chasing you down that corridor and stuff like that. But in terms of personal enjoyment, I think Pit of Sauron is the coolest. Personal enjoyment, I like Pit of Sauron the most, then Halls of Reflection, and then, Forge of Souls. That's my personal, on those.
That you can expect to get from these dungeons will be...
Halls of Reflection is cool once, then it's annoying. Yeah, that's actually a fair point, yeah.
219 eye level gear for the normal version, and for the heroic version, they drop 232 item level. So this is the equivalent to TOC 10 normal, or even Ulduar 25 normal.
That's really good.
So yeah, it's pretty strong gear to say it only comes from a 5-man. First, we should talk about the attunement to the dungeon, because yes, whilst attunements are almost a forgotten aspect of the game by now, if they introduce this dungeon how they were originally, you have to do the dungeons in an order to experience the story, which basically explains what the point of the dungeons are.
Yeah, so Forge of Souls, then Pit of Sauron, then Halls of Reflection last, right?
It's not an attunement as such. You do need to get attuned to the following dungeons by doing the first dungeon first, basically. I'm not going to sit here and talk you through it all, because quite honestly, it's as simple as just doing the dungeons in the right order, like I just said, which is kind of hard to get wrong on the basis you shouldn't be able to go in a dungeon you haven't yet completed the story for in the previous dungeons. So in order anyway, it goes Forge of Souls, then into Pit of Sauron, and then finally finally,
imagine doing attunements in 2023. What a meme. I think attunements, in terms of like a role play perspective, like, you know, like I think they're really, really cool. But I guess they can be very obnoxious if you like having a lot of characters, right? But I kind of like in vanilla, I kind of like doing my jailbreak. I like doing my Unixia pre-quest and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. It's like you're preparing yourself up for the raids. But if you have a lot of alts and you level a lot of characters, they can become really annoying, right? So yeah, I get what you mean with it.
I would imagine you can do these all on Heroic the first time round in Classic anyway, so you shouldn't need to worry about having to clear normal dungeons on your full TOGC geared main. I'll give you some highlights of all three, starting with Forge of Souls. There's 2 bosses in here, and you need to kill them both to get through the quest. The first boss is Bronze Arm, and quite honestly, the only guide you'll ever need to kill this boss is the one I read here from the Wowhead comments back.
First, have your tank get on up. Once he gets aggro, have your DPS get on the scene. Then have your healer get on up. Finally, take him down like a sex machine. What?
In 2009. Follow this step by step, and the boss will just fall over. He does have a chance of dropping a 20 and a 22 slot bag, so that's a bonus. And the second and final boss is Devourer of Souls, which could be compared to Reliquary of Souls in Black Temple if you did.
It's literally just a red version. It's the exact same thing. Blizzard loves reusing their assets, man.
But both fights are fairly straightforward. There's nothing too hard, well, especially on normal. On Heroic, obviously, they're a step up, but ultimately, it is only a 5-man. So you're going in here just to try and get some catch-up loot, so you don't want it too difficult. Anyway, once you've done Forge of Souls, you'll be off into the second dungeon, which is the Pit of Saron, or Pit of Saron, whatever you want to call it. This is the one you'll see pugs forming for constantly, just to try and get your hands on a battered hilt, or even...
I got this sword back in the day on my rogue called Re. I like this dungeon a lot. The gauntlet in the end is really, really cool.
A never melting ice crystal if it becomes the meta snapshot, which is highly likely. The battered hilt is a quest item that can be sold on the auction house and rewards some pretty sick weapons, to say the item only comes from a 5-man.
It's nice.
It can drop in all 3 heroics, but the reason I say it will be farmed in Pit of Saron a lot is just because it's got quite a high density of trash, and it can be farmed from any of them. So it's not just bosses, you can farm any piece of trash in here. And as I say, Pit of Saron is like one big trash dungeon, so sort of the perfect place to go. It's got quite a cool quest line, which I won't go into here, but honestly, it's worth getting hold of one of these just to complete the quest chain, so you can say that you have. The final
you can sell it for more than 500k gold? I really doubt that. I mean, with GDK, I guess with GDK piece being, I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely lost my sense of like, what is it called? Sense of like gold, whatever gold is worth anymore on Wrath. But yeah, I mean, maybe like on the first day or like first few days, it's gonna go crazy like that. But I feel like, maybe. Original Wrath, it was worth 8 to 12k. It was worth a lot back in the day. I was really hyped when I got it on my rogue, I remember, but I don't know. I feel like the economy in the game is just so screwed now, right? People will grind that shit on day one and flood the auction house with it. Probably, yeah.
Dungeon is Halls of Reflection, and honestly, this is my favourite. Being chased by the Lich King through a dungeon just feels pretty epic. There's nothing really notable in terms of loot outside the fact you have a chance, as with all of these heroics, to get a battered hilt, but the thing that just makes this my favourite is the pursuit through the dungeon. This also has 3 bosses, and all of them have got pretty cool mechanics. Dude, I will break these all down in a future video, as in, if you want to know the tactics for them, you won't need them, you'll be able to go in and work it out, but I will do a bit of a dive into these heroics a bit closer to the time. But anyway, that's the dungeons and a little bit of what to expect. But my problem with them, it sounds like I'm really looking forward to them. Well, I mean, I am really looking forward to them, but I feel like the rewards in these need to be good. These dungeons...
I mean, Bustatai, thank you for the 12 months prime. I don't know if they need to be necessarily that great. I mean, I feel like the reason for these raids are somewhat like a... it's just like a catch-up. If you haven't done a botload of raiding and you want to catch up a little bit and get ready for ICC, then, you know, that's what it makes it good for, right? It's not necessarily to get insanely good gear, right?
Should be ran to death by everyone, but with the likelihood of getting another tier of Titan Rune dungeons, where we've just had Alpha, we've had Beta, and now we'll probably have Charlie, or whatever they call it, you're likely going to be able to get 232 gear from those Titan dungeons from any other heroic.
Yeah, those heroic, whatever the heck.
And the fact that these on heroic already drop 232 gear, the only solution I can see which would actually work is if you do the Titan Rune version of these 3 dungeons, then you get TOC 10 heroic gear. This would be 245. That way it'd keep these 3 dungeons extremely relevant in comparison.
I feel like people are going to have so crazy OP gear then. I mean, everybody will. I mean, I don't know.
To the rest. I'm not saying that doesn't come with its issues, because now if there's a really good item from, let's say, the new Titan version of Nexus, but it's not the daily, hardly anyone will want to go. Understandably so. Right. Okay. Most people will end up doing whatever the daily is and then doing all 3 new dungeons and calling it a day.
I don't think there's a reason to make the gear even easier to get, right? Because it turns into like sort of like a, you know, I don't know what the word for it is, but like it's just too easy to get stuff, right? Like you need to work a little bit for things, like maybe like do the dungeons and then go into the raids and then, you know, actually play the game, right?
Perfect solution to me is actually to get none of them. Yep, that's right. No new Titan Room dungeons in the last phase.
Okay.
Or in the second from last phase if Ruby Sanctum's got its own phase. More on that later. Spoilers, man. And I do see it as the perfect solution, and actually none of you will probably like what I'm saying, but having Titan Room dungeons in the next phase is just not going to feel great. If they leave it all as it is, you'll be able to get your TOC gear in TOC still, you'll be able to get your Order R10 gear from Titan Room betas, and then you'll be able to get really nice solid upgrades for your ults or as catch-up gear from these 3 new dungeons and heroics. I feel like the addition of a new Titan Room tier of dungeons, I don't feel like it's needed in the next phase. It's too much, I agree. It would also make things a lot easier for Blizzard as well, because they have no extra work and they can focus on making ICC as bug-free and perfect as it can be. Which I suppose leads us on nicely.
It'll be fun to see if there's going to be like some, like on the Serenite box or something like that, but we'll see. Maybe Blizzard will have like have it be really, really clean, obviously. We'll see.
To the big one that we're all excited for. ICC. Not only ICC, though, the legendary weapon that has every DK warrior and paladin creaming themselves up.
I wonder how much this is going to go in those GDKPs, man. Like, Shadowmourne, GDKP, they're going to sell those shards, like 50k gold per shard. I don't know, man. They're going to sell them for a lot, right? And as well, you know, people are going to be farming, like, Ashen Verdict rep. Like, they're probably going to sell Ashen Verdict rep, like, farms. So you can just, like, stand AFK in the beginning of Light's Hammer here. And then, like, all the people, they will just, like, clear the first little trash for you. And you just, like, whenever you gotta go out, whenever they're done, you just go out and then you go back in, right? They're pre-sold. 10 million. How much are they pre-sold for 10 million?
Over Shadowmourne. I don't really know why I put a little voice on when I said Shadowmourne. Notice it went deep. Okay. I don't know. First off, back in the day, how the raid worked. It was gated. So each
10 million
Shadowmourne on the warrior. Hype.
Shadowmourne on the warrior. I don't think there's any way I can get Shadowmourne on my warrior, man, because I haven't played for a buttload of time. I don't really have a guild, and I don't really want to do GDKPs myself, so I think it's probably not gonna happen, right?
Wing opened every few weeks, and then finally Heroic, and then you just progress through. This boss is cool. I like these bosses. We know it won't be like that. Instead, what's going to happen is we'll talk about how much of a step up in difficulty it's going to be when we're playing on the PTR, and then watch guilds clear it in 45 minutes. So yeah, I would imagine all content's going to be available at launch, and you won't need to do normal before you do Heroic.
Guys, GuzuTV, listen, man. I'm not gonna lie, dude. I had some. Listen, they were great. Okay, I feel like when we did Nax, when we did Obsidian Sanctum, when we did those raids, it worked pretty well. Whenever Ulduar came out, it went downhill. Okay, it went downhill a little bit. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. So I have thought about getting back into Wrath at least like once per week with a raid once per week, and I talked to Rujiji a little bit about maybe being able to raid with his guild. As like a 1 per week thing on my rogue. That could be kind of fun. I don't know if I want to organize anything myself, but I might be able to like do some raids with Rujiji and those guys, right? We'll figure it out, guys. I don't want to do GDKPs though.
It could surprise us, but XT I really don't see the requirement of killing Lich King normal before we can actually start progressing in Heroic, but we'll see. Now, over the course of ICC, originally, to make it as accessible as possible to every skill range of player, they added a buff. It would increase damage, healing, and absorb effects by 5% and would stack up to 30% over the course of many, many weeks.
I kind of hope, like, at least in the beginning, they shouldn't have this in from the beginning, right? I think they should, like, leave it, like, kind of as is in the beginning, like, without the buff and everything like that. And then maybe they could slowly add it like they did originally, right? I think it was, like, a ramping buff that, like, came, like, it became harder and, like, easier and easier a little bit, right? I don't think they should put this in the beginning for sure, man. You know?
The course of many, many weeks. Originally, it was in March when the first 5% buff hit, and then it was around 4 months later when it reached a peak of 30%. I don't see it taking that long on live, and I wouldn't be surprised actually if they just added it in at launch with a toggle NPC where you can select what percentage you want to do the raid with. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. In my opinion, it should start with no buff for at least a few resets, and then they add it straight to 30%. But you can select whether you want to do it with 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30. The only
I agree with this. I think they should just leave it out without the buff, probably have the bosses pre-nerf, and then, like, you know, see how people do it. Like, see if people are going to struggle or not, like, how it's going to happen. And then, like, months later, whatever the heck, then they can, like, add the buff little by little, as they did originally, right? I think that's fine. Boss wasn't killed until 5%. Yeah, I think it was Paragon, right? Was it Paragon that killed it? Or whatever the heck?
Downside to the whole buff system is it doesn't affect loot. You can smash through it with 30% and get the same loot as someone doing it with 0%. So let me know in the comments how you think it should work, because I'm genuinely intrigued to see if anyone's got any really interesting ideas, like if you do it with no buff, 1 extra item from each boss or something like that. Or maybe if you do it with 15% or less, it's 1 extra item. If you do it 0%, it's 2 extra items. Or
so you would get extra items. I think they shouldn't leave it in from the beginning. They should just, like, have the buff not be there at all, and then like they did back in the day, not give, like, incentives for do it without the buffs. Just make the buff, like, come there slowly, like, you know, little by little, right? But, like, that should be in a long time from now, right? Not at the beginning, no buffs for sure, I think, right? Not heroic.
Extra Shadow Frost shards for the for making Shadowmourne, you know. Something along those lines. I don't know. But
I guess if there's no reward for like, you know, choosing the easier way, then, you know, they wouldn't do it. Maybe once they introduce the buff, you could be like, like he said, like, maybe you could do it then. Maybe, like, once the buff comes, they can be like, okay, if you want to do it without the buff, you could get, like, there's a chance for more loot or something, right? To incentivize going harder. Perhaps that could be a good idea.
Let me know what you think in the comments. Go on, stop, pause the video now, and write a comment. I'll wait.
I'm not going to write a comment. I'm not doing it. No, I'm just going to wait. Okay, this is kind of awkward.
We'll just carry on. I genuinely am looking forward to the PTR for this phase more than any phase so far. And if you want to see me stream anything and everything, pretty much every night, kick.com/ScottyJ.
Like card tricks.
I don't want to get into the loot from ICC too much because there's so much of it and we'll be here all day. But it does hold some items that everyone will be excited for, such as Deathbringer's Will.
Yeah, there it is.
This trinket does go down in history as one of the best, and with good reason. Transforming the look of your character when it procs was just epic, and obviously the stats on it was just bonkers as well. The weapons from Lich King 25 Heroic are always going to be really exciting to get, but on the basis every Cataclysm hater out there has plans on quitting when they kill the Lich King on Heroic, there shouldn't really be many people rolling on these, so should be
for me, the story kind of died with Lich King, man. I stopped caring a little bit more about the story once Lich King was dead, right? Because I feel like it kind of went downhill a little bit, but, you know.
Easy to get, sure. Yeah. Shadowmourne is not actually terribly hard to get. You're going to want to do some rep runs to get friendly before clearing the raid, and outside of the Primordial Saronite, which is going to cost a few gold in the first week or two, you're going to get a pretty sick weapon from the first quest, which is Shadow's Edge, and it's 264 eye level.
And
all
you
your
reps, your DKs,
your warriors that can use this two-hander can get to this stage and get the weapon. It's not until you kill a few more bosses for quests and need to start farming the Shadow Frost shards that it's time to start treating it like Valanir, and then you're just going to take it in terms of getting this part of the quest done. I really think we're going to see a lot of Shadowmourns, and we've seen a lot of Valanirs, but I think we're going to see more Shadowmourns than Valanirs, because I just think the player bases today are going to just be banging them out left, right, centre.
There's going to be so many raids and so many GDKPs of people buying these, man. It's going to be pretty crazy for sure.
It won't take several months to progress the bosses. Everything will be available at launch,
the ring
not
too. I remember that.
Parts of the quest chain. And I mean, just look at Valanir. Go round and inspect any Holy Paladin. I mean, not having Valanir, what are you doing if you're a Holy Paladin without Valanir, Mickey?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mickey. Private joke. He knows who he is. But yeah, they're just everywhere, and I would say
they're... Is that an Infernal, like, swimming around? I noticed it earlier when he showed the B-roll of this, but...
arguably harder to obtain. Outside of all the loot, you can have access to some cool new titles like Kingslayer and the Light of Dawn, and you can get a mount that no one can see, but it's still cool to have. I mean, it's invincible. Sorry, old memes never die. Ruby Sanctum is a bit of a weird one. It's a bit like OST.
Ruby Sanctum? I never did that raid, okay? I played a load of Rat back in the day, but I never did that raid. I don't know what, I don't know. I guess it was because it was like an introduction to Cataclysm, but I actually didn't do it. I straight up just didn't do it, and I played a lot of Wrath. I had no life. I have no life, but especially back then and now, just in general. But you know what I mean.
10 OS 25. So it's real short, and it's just a one boss raid that comes right at the end of time. So literally months after ICC, and just while you're really either...
Yeah, I think the gear is really insane, Kaiser, but I never did it. I don't know why I never did it, but I just didn't.
Quit the game or waiting for the pre-patch for Kata. That was originally. But now I see it getting released shortly after ICC. Okay. If they were smart, they'd release them together, but just have a custom gate for it where you have to have killed the Lich King on normal to access normal Ruby Sanctum, and you have to kill the Lich King on heroic to access Ruby Sanctum heroic. Ruby Sanctum does have some pretty bonkers gear that you're going to want to get, but you're not going to want to make the ICC progress easier by going and doing Ruby Sanctum before going into ICC.
I actually like that. I think that's a cool idea of doing it. So if they release it like that, because the Ruby Sanctum gear is so busted, right? Because it's like the final phase of Wrath. So yeah, I actually think that's a really, really cool idea. If you want to do Ruby Sanctum, you have to kill normal Lich King for normal Ruby Sanctum. If you want to do Heroic, you gotta kill Heroic Lich King. Because then you can have access to that really busted, like, crazy gear, right? And then people can farm their Priebus and Ruby Sanctum and then go into Wrath, go into Lich King afterwards. I actually like that. I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
And doing Ruby Sanctum before going into ICC.
I like that a lot.
I haven't really got a lot to say about Ruby Sanctum outside of that, to be honest. It's a raid. It exists.
Ruby is easier? Yeah, I mean, but that's the point. The raid is easier than ICC, but the loot is way better. So like but being able to, like, having to clear ICC first makes it so you can't just farm, you know, Priebus and Ruby Sanctum and then go into ICC and then clear that easier too, right? So you have access to that really, really good gear if you can do ICC. So, like, you know, you can't do Ruby Sanctum before you've done ICC, but the gear is better, right? So I think that's cool. I like that.
Memorably unmemorable. Finally, if I didn't talk about Random Dungeon Finder, then what sort of an ICC video would this be? It was with this patch we got Random Dungeon Finder back in 2009. Yeah. I've been hopeful that it would actually be the time Blizzard just let go of whatever their issue is with Random Dungeon Finder and just added it in. At this
point, I feel
if you saw my recent video about the new Cataclysm survey that went out, which you should go and watch if you haven't seen it, they said about making the looking for group tool better and building on it. So at this moment in time, it looks like they aren't even considering Random Dungeon Finder for Cataclysm. It really is such a missed opportunity, and one I can never shut up about, because I want my Friday night smashing low-level characters in full looms and full enchants through dungeons that at the moment are just impossible to get groups for. But that's it. End of rant.
I feel like at that point, like, you should just add it, man. Like, I don't think there's a reason not to really add it. Am I bigoted thinking Random Dungeon Finder is good and looking for raid is bad? Looking for raid, I mean, I think Random Dungeon Finder doesn't really have any... I mean, I think it's fine, honestly, at this point, like, because it's so difficult to get groups. Whenever I was leveling Badouche and, like, all my characters for Wrath, my alts, I could find some dungeon groups, but it was really difficult, right? Even with, like, all the boys trying to help up from stream and everything like that. I feel like it was fine. No changes, don't give in. What do you mean no changes? I mean, no changes is literally adding the Random Dungeon Finder. I mean, that is literally no changes. I feel like in Wrath, just... yeah, I don't see a reason really not to do it, because people can just queue up for the game and then they can play it, right? And that's how it is. So, yeah. Hardcore plus no changes. I feel like the whole no changes thing were debunked a long time ago. I mean, I still would like to see oh my god, why do I always go back to vanilla? I would love to see, like, a vanilla, like, no changes server with, like, you know, progressive itemization and stuff like that. But I also really, really am intrigued to see how they're gonna go down, like, a more classic plus route, right, as well. But good video from Scott J here. He's almost at 80.